900 is just 30 by 30, so 1640 squared, he likes it. Hey, Frankie. And since you wanted to hear that solution so badly and waited until the end of the video to get it, here's a last one for you to debate down in the comments. How many four-sided figures appear in this diagram? Good luck. I'll give you the answer, as well as a cool new theory next week. Until then, honk honk. It's an episode that'll make Goose Willis proud, famed actor of the waterfowl world, famous for his movies Die Hard, Armageddon. I can't think of any bird puns to go in with any of those. Six. I feel like there's so many I'm leaving on the table right now. Armageddon. Die Hard. Wow, I can't think of a single Goose or bird pun for any of those three. I'm so disappointed in myself.
Expedia helps you book every detail for every traveler and every...
Dear Scott Cawthon, hi, it's me, Austin, and it is time for my biggest challenge yet. Can I do a video on a game that I haven't played yet, that isn't even out yet, based on no gameplay footage because it does not exist? And, hell, just to make it even extra challenging, can we turn one single image from the promotional press package into an entire video? Can we? Can we do it? You bet your donkey we can. The topic I want to cover today is actually really cool, and the main goal going through all of this is to make sure that I don't say anything that offends my favorite Persian electrical engineer on this website, Electroboom. So no, it's not the voltage that kills, but the current in this video. If I can get from right now all the way to the very end without saying anything super wrong about electrical engineering, I am going to consider that a solid win. And it all boils down to this one picture from the press package for the Five Nights at Freddy's augmented reality game that's coming out soon-ish? Anyway, the game, officially called Five Nights at Freddy's AR Special Delivery, which is apparently trying to compete with anime for convoluted titles, will basically let you play Five Nights at Freddy's in the real world with your phone, so you can live in permanent fear by associating murderous animatronics with your real, actual house, the one that you sleep in. So that's fun. The game, like all augmented reality games, is played with your phone as the main interface with the rest of the world, and as a result, the designers of FNAF ARSD made the game reflect this by making it so all the buttons and stuff you press in-game are smartphone related. This also allows them to seamlessly integrate one of the normally baffling core game contrivances into the FNAF series into the game, the limited battery power. This brings us back to the picture from before. This one, a picture that shows us a returning mechanic from Sister Location, where you use electric shocks to temporarily disable the evil possessed robots that are trying to kill you. An electric shock coming from your cell phone, leaping several feet into a robot with enough power to disable them. Oh boy! So, shocking someone with your cell phone. This is not an easy numbers in, numbers out question to answer because there are a lot of moving parts to consider. We have some problems to overcome, but in the shortest, simplest terms, is it possible to use your cell phone to produce giant electrical arcs? Maybe. Let's try and figure it out. The first major problem is the robot itself. So, the convention in FNAF, starting with Sister Location, is that electricity temporarily disables animatronics. This is not a permanent state. This is, unfortunately, not how electronics work. If you apply enough electricity to an electronic device to render it non-functional, that is, generally speaking, a permanent state. You have killed it. Good job! This is because if you apply really high currents to devices that exceed its rating, it will cause some component to permanently fail by burning out because, hey, electricity is a force caused by the moving of electrons, and its main byproduct is heat. A lot of electronics are protected by what's called a fuse, which is a point through which all electricity has to flow before reaching delicate components. If too much electricity flows through a fuse, the metal will melt and disconnect, breaking off the flow of electricity. That means that some devices need to be repaired by resoldering or plugging in a new fuse, but hey, at least it didn't fry any of the important parts. Unfortunately, in the case of Five Nights at Freddy's, ways, this does not work. Because if the animatronics turn themselves back on, that means that they clearly don't have a fuse. Since when a fuse dies, it dies. Your house actually has very similar technology in it. It's your circuit breaker box. When too much electricity flows through a breaker, it heats up a deflected piece of metal, which activates a switch that disables the flow of electricity to a specific area of your house. The problem here is that breakers still need manual reactivation, meaning that once you disable a FNAF robot, it's turned off until some idiot turns it back on. Or at least that's what I thought, until I discovered auto-resetting circuit breakers. They work the exact same way as a normal switch breaker, but as the metal cools off after overheating, it will deflect back into place, reconnecting the power. Bam! Got him! The lowest rated automatically resetting breaker I could find was rated to switch off when 12 volts and 10 amps flow through it at a minimum of 4.5 seconds and a max of 28 seconds. We want the most temperamental breaker we can find because that's going to make it way more likely that our phone battery is going to realistically be able to work. The higher the power requirements, the less likely we're going to be able to bend the laws of the universe to make this make sense. Now, the electricity. Phone batteries are all different, but most of them are under 4,000 milliamp hours and rated for 3.85 volts. This gives a typical phone battery a total energy storage of 51,282 joules, which we can figure out by taking the milliamp hours and multiplying them by 3,600 to get the total charge, and then multiply that by the voltage, which, for my phone, a Pixel XL, which has seen better days. Look, I let my kid walk off with it, and when they came back, it looked like this. Life lesson, do not let your toddler play with your phone. But it still works fine. Look! See? Okay, I'll get a new phone. Anyway, my phone has 3,700 milliamp hours and a voltage of 3.85 volts, giving it a total potential energy of 51,282 joules. Bam! We can mostly ignore this for now, but it will be important later. Now, electrical arcs. Woohoo! Oh boy, electrical arcs. These are really tricky. Electricity does not want to arc across open air. There's usually tons of easier things to jump to before leaping through the air, which at distances in this picture are what, like 1 to 3 feet? That gives air a resistance of anywhere from 115-ish billion gigaohms to 375 billion gigaohms. In order to get electricity to arc these distances, you need really, really high voltages, like absurdly high. Technically, this is technically, the voltage requirements to arc through a given gas are governed by Pascal's law, which is this ugly monster that I simply could not get to behave at all. I suspect it's this prime symbol over here that's giving me trouble. Thankfully, within these parameters, the voltages required for arcing electricity are pretty well known and mostly kinda linear. In Earth's atmosphere, at standard conditions, electricity requires 3 million volts per meter in order to arc. So for our phone zapper, we're looking at anything from 915,000 volts to 3 million volts. That is a lot to expect from a tiny battery rated for 3.85 volts. Now, there are ways to boost voltage while sacrificing your current, though. Unfortunately, all the best ways to do this seem to be using alternating current, or AC, for like 1,000 different reasons that I don't want to get into because I will say something wrong and mess it up. Chemical batteries, meanwhile, provide DC, or direct current. And it's here where I would love to cut away to an AC/DC song, and if I did that, Columbia Records would be like, and it's here where I'd love to take all of your money! So here's a knockoff version instead. I didn't vacillate on whether or not using a power inverter to turn the DC into AC, or whether to use what's called a DC step-up boost converter would be the best way to go, but then, looking at it further, I realized this wasn't even close to my biggest problem. The shortcomings of AC to DC is irrelevant when you compare it to the actual biggest problem. How do you store all these volts from such a low power source? Because it turns out you can't build a single capacitor capable of storing 3 million volts because, like I said before, air is a great insulator, better than most others. So voltages that are high enough to arc through the air are probably going to arc through any other material you make a capacitor out of. A capacitor is a pretty simple device that's actually really similar to a chemical battery, but it holds electrons differently. Specifically, it's able to hold high voltages and release them much faster than a typical chemical battery. See, a chemical battery, which is like really almost like every single battery you use in everyday life, is a device that stores energy using, well, chemicals. In the case of lithium-ion batteries, like your cell phone has, one side of the battery has lithium cobalt oxide, and the other side has graphite, and they're separated by an electrolyte. When you charge the battery, the electrons are attracted to this side, flow through the power source, and then deposited on the graphite. The lithium ions are then attracted through the electrolyte to the other side. Then, when you power something, this whole process works in reverse. Capacitors work in a very similar way by having two conductive metals side by side separated by an insulator. Electrons are free to build up on one side and push the electrons out of the other side. One side becomes negatively charged, the other positively charged, and you can release all this energy at once. Bam! The trade-off with capacitors is that they can hold less total energy than a battery, and they can hold it for only a kind of short period of time. And there are practical limitations to how much voltage a single capacitor can hold. Okay, so what are our problems? Let's reiterate. In order to zap an animatronic, we have to up our 3.85 volt battery voltage up to 3 million volts somehow. We also have to store this energy in order to release it all at once. The only thing working in our favor is that once the arc has been established, the air it's passing through becomes ionized, which allows electricity to flow much more easily through it, meaning 3 million volts is a temporary requirement. The highest pump converter I could find for DC was 300 volts. That is not ideal, because capacitors can only store charge at the peak voltage they're provided with. But do not fear, because capacitors that are wired in series together add their voltages together, meaning we only need a minimum of 3,000-ish capacitors and a maximum of 10,000. Since we don't actually need a ton of power output, we can use relatively weak ones, I think. Don't judge me, my king! Anyway, Mouser lets us buy capacitors in bulk for a discount, so we can spend only $30,000 to $97,000 on capacitors weighing almost 19 kilograms or over 40 pounds. Now, once we've established our first arc, essentially ionizing the air, all we have to do is deliver a comparatively tame 20 amps at 12 volts over our ionized wire made of oxygen and nitrogen over 4.5 to 28 seconds. With the aid of capacitors and step-ups, can our 51,282 joule battery handle this? Yes, with some limitations. Lithium-ion batteries can only really draw about 2.5 amps of current tops without risking melting the wires connected to them. This, along with volts, is our bottleneck, because if you fry the connectors, you're never going to be able to use your phone or its battery ever again. The max wattage of our battery, which is joules per second, or amps times volts, is 9.625 watts. At 9.625 joules per second, and a required joules between 1,080 and 6,720, this means it would take anywhere from 112 seconds to just shy of 12 minutes to charge our capacitors, and an average of 27 shocks per fully charged battery. That's kind of impressive, but of course the implications if you were to build such a device are utterly terrifying. Sure, maybe you could shock an animatronic, maybe, but you know what's way closer than an animatronic? You! The current is just as likely to short to you, or the phone chassis, delivering, depending upon where it hits, something as small as 12 milliamps, which would give you a really nasty shock, like, youch, one of the worst ones you've ever felt in your life. That's the best case scenario, because if conditions are just right, they can deliver up to 120 milliamps to your body, through your heart, which is instant, irreversible death. Also, that's all ignoring the Ghostbusters backpack you need to wear of full electrical equipment, capacitors, and boosters in order to get the voltage high enough. I mean, honestly, even if you were to use a Tesla coil, usually Teslas that produce these voltages are huge. So either way, you're looking at a big, expensive backpack. And also, the implications of this is that the electric shocks are not an improvised weapon, because the animatronics are installed with auto-resetting circuit breakers. They are designed with this in mind. So you have a thousands of dollars device that exists all in order to temporarily disable a murderous robot for a few minutes. Wonderful! Hey, you know a much cheaper way to turn electricity created from a lithium-ion battery into a dead animatronic? It's called a Sawzall. You're welcome. Anyway, maybe I messed up enough stuff that you learned in your first 2 years of electrical engineering school to give Electro Boom material to do his own video, and maybe he'll finally, I don't know, make a functioning taser out of a cell phone battery or something? Man, I hope no one floods his inbox asking for a cell phone taser that runs off your cell phone battery. That'd be horrible. Sincerely, Austin.
So, the last Minecraft theory had me doing a lot of tree punching. I have no doubt that me teaching you how to punch down a tree like you do in Minecraft inspired tens of thousands of you loyal theorists out there to try it for yourself. Mowing down saplings faster than an overeater lumberjack. By today, I want to start the episode by making amends. Theorists, it's time to stop the punching and start the planting. My friend Jimmy, you may have heard of him, he runs a channel called Mr. Beast, is a YouTuber that's looking to make a difference.
He's also from North Carolina.
Exactly a nice break. Thanks.
Yes, they know that. Mr. Beast, alongside another friend of mine, the incredibly smart Mark Rober, are currently working to raise $20 million in order to plant 20 million trees by 2020. It's a very numerically sound thing. Anyway, it's in honor of Jimmy getting 20 million subscribers, which, not jealous of that. But anyway, I'll let Jimmy and Mark explain for themselves.
We reviewed a bunch of different options on how to pull this off, and eventually settled with working with the Arbor Day Foundation. They're the largest, most well-respected nonprofit for planting trees, and we got them to agree that for every $1 we raise, they would plant 1 tree. That literally means if someone donates $3, 3 more trees will exist in the world than if they didn't.
It's pretty incredible, right? So if you'd like to be a part of this massive movement to make the world just a little bit greener, a donation link to the fund is in the top line of the description. 100% of your donation goes directly to the Arbor Day, and every dollar is 1 more tree in the ground. If everyone who watches this video gives $1, well, I don't know how many people watch it, but, you know, I'm not sure what math problem is called. Literally multiplying by 1, so I trust you. Anyway, with that being said, and us making amends for all the trees that we punched down, it's time to talk zombie pigs. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, where, gotta be honest, I'm still icing my knuckles after last week. Today, we're continuing our deep dive exploration into the lost lore of Minecraft by looking at what is, in my opinion, the strangest part of the universe, the zombie pigmen. And for me to call them out as the strangest is saying a lot, considering this is also a world full of living snowmen and laser-shooting pufferfish. Maybe it wouldn't be so strange if this was a mob that was only a bipedal pig creature that lived in HE double toothpicks, but no, it has to be a zombified bipedal pig living in HE double toothpicks that also carries around a butter sword for reasons, and also has no non-zombified versions of itself left anywhere on the planet. Now that is a weird collection of attributes, and if we're being 100% honest, it's probably because their origins are pretty bizarre. Tall, human-like pigs have been kicking around as an unused idea in Minecraft since the very beginning. A Minecraft user first came up with the idea for pigmen way back in 2010, and the game's creator Notch almost used them as the game's villagers a year later. It didn't happen. And in 2012, Notch revealed in the documentary Minecraft: The Story of Mojang that the game's signature creature, the Creeper, was also born out of awkwardly tall pig monsters.
Well, Creepers were a mistake. I don't have any modeling programs to do the models, and I accidentally made them tall instead of model, so it was like a tall thing before the
So if I were to guess, the zombie pigmen exist and are connected to creepers, villagers, and normal pigs purely because of a sequence of happy accidents, coding errors, and scrapped ideas that God eventually made into canon. But that's the real story for why zombie pigmen are probably in this game. What we're interested in is the fictional story. How can these creatures possibly fit into the surprisingly cohesive massive lore of Minecraft that we've been building over the last couple of episodes. How do you fit 2 dead pigs from each double hockey sticks into a tale about an ancient civilization of long-lost builders? Gotta be honest, this one started as a, I have no idea how we're gonna explain this, but by the end of my research, we've got a pretty solid case. To start piecing together the lore of the zombie pigmen, we first have to look at their innate clues. Now, obviously, these creatures are most commonly associated with Nether, but they can, on very rare occasions, appear in the overworld. When lightning strikes within 4 blocks of a pig, a zombie pigman will suddenly spawn. That immediately tells us that these 2 creatures are in some way connected. That the pigmen, at least at one point in their history, were related to normal, everyday pigs. We also know that the pigmen share some form of psychic link. Now, that might seem absurd to say, but their hostile behavior patterns confirm it. Attack one zombie pigman, and somehow all the others within a massive radius will become aggressive and converge on Steve. And it's not because they're hearing their attack friends, since the sounds they make are relatively quiet. And everyone is still aggressive, even if that attack happens in a completely sealed-off closed box that just deads the sound to any outside listener. The immediacy and aggression of their attack can only mean that they're linked in some way. And lastly, it's also important to note that they don't begin as hostile. They only turn hostile when they've been attacked. So under normal circumstances, they technically have nothing against Steve. It's only once Steve becomes aggressive that they suddenly have a reason to defend themselves. This admittedly gives us a lot to work with, but it's still just a bunch of loose threads without something to tie it all together. Any theory that I would craft to try and explain it all would be missing that linchpin of evidence that anchors the narrative. But then came this year's Minecon, the Mojang team's annual interactive livestream all about the Minecraft franchise, complete with discussions about upcoming features, big world premiere announcements, and lots of other stuff.
This is gonna look weird, but you can't hear. Hello. Hello.
It's gotta juice that sweet, sweet watch time. And this year, between gooey hands and whatever this was, we received a ton of information about what changes are rolling out in the Minecraft world over the next couple of months. The blocks, working blocks, but of course, changes coming in Minecraft together. Specifically, the new Piglin civilization. Zombie pigmen are no more. Piglins and zombie piglins are here to stay.
Piglin is actually what we call the pigmen now. The piglin is almost like a new civilization that we add to the Nether.
But there was one detail about this mob in particular that caught my attention.
They are actually hostile towards the player. They also don't like wither skeletons.
They don't like wither skeletons, huh? That's an oddly specific detail for them to call out. From writing all of these episodes, I gotta say that so much of piecing together this game's story relies on picking apart spawn conditions and hostile behavioral patterns. Like in any good story, those sorts of details are telling you the relationships between our main characters, as it were. And so hearing Jeb call out the hostility towards one particular mob really stood out to me, especially since, as we established during our episode on the Wither skeletons are most likely the remains of the ancient builder race. There are plenty of reasons as to why,